So my name's Hana, and I'll talk to you today about how you can elevate new developers, juniors, developers who are new to your team. As so many companies are hiring, and you probably know the struggle to find senior developers and great developers, but there's also other solutions. And one of them is you can bring in the juniors and teach them your ways, bring them up to speed in your company. So first, let me tell you something fast about me. So my formal background is in judgment and decision-making psychology. I was doing PhD and I learned R, and that kind of re-sparked my interest in programming because R is a statistical language, which is very similar to programming languages. After I finished my PhD, I was teaching paragliding for like 5 years. And then my daughter was born. And I thought, once she's 3 months old, I'll take her with me on a hill, and the lives go as it was before, without any troubles. You can guess that this wasn't exactly the case. And while I was looking for something to do with her, I stumbled upon a meetup, which is basically a free Ruby course for women, which is called Ruby Monsters. And that's where I got my first contact with Ruby and its great community. As I realized I don't want to teach paragliding with my kids all the time, I was looking for something what I can do from home with my daughter and something what would interest me. So I started to do web development and offer websites for small businesses, and I was learning on the go. When my daughter was born, I was looking for courses which I could attend as an adult, but also take my daughter with me. And there were almost none. There's a lot of courses for kids, like baby singing and baby swinging and baby whatever, but there are not courses where you as a new parent can take your kid and teach something for yourself. So I wanted to change that, and I started Moms Learn to Code, where I was teaching moms or new parents web development. And so the main point was that they could bring their babies with them. And 30 to 50% of participants did exactly that. Afterwards, my son was born. It's not the same kid, I promise. They just, babies look the same. And I also started to teach Ruby and Rails for Le Wagon. And as a self-employed developer, I was doing small websites, and mostly in WordPress, and I still wanted to push it more towards Ruby and Rails, but it wasn't the best fit. So when I get an opportunity to work as a contractor for a bigger company as a Rails developer, I took that, and I worked there for a year. And afterwards, I was lucky enough to apply and be accepted by GitHub, where I work today. And that brought me here, to rubyday. And it will also bring me to Helvetic Ruby, which we organize with the friends. It would be nice to see some of you there. And the last image is, we also have a cat. And as I saw today, many images of the cats, I decided to show you ours. So this is Banshee. But now, let's go to the meat of this talk. First, what we won't talk about today. So we won't talk about the hiring phase, like how to make your job ads inclusive and how to state just what you are really looking for to motivate developers to apply, also new developers or developers from minorities. We also won't talk about how to reduce the risk of the company by hiring developers when they are afraid to hire the wrong person. And we want to talk about interviews. So what we will talk about today. If there would be just 3 things I would wish for you to remember from this talk, it would be the power of kindness and support. You can show your other developers, your new developers, but also your older colleagues, the value of hands-on experience and how much it can propel people. And then we will talk about looking to the future. So after people are onboarded, ramped up, what lays ahead for them. So, yes, I joined GitHub in March 2020, and I work at the code scanning team since. In this talk, I'm bringing experience from me as a new developer, from me as a teacher and coach at Ruby Monsters, Levagon, and also I combine it with my psychology background. I wish for you to pick up what works for you. Like, you work in different companies. Some teams are small, some teams are big, some teams are mostly in person, some are remote. So you're invited to cherry pick whatever works for you and adapt it to your situation. First, I would want to talk about how being kind and supportive helps people open their minds and makes them feel us, makes them able to ask the questions, get unstuck, and then learn faster. When I came to GitHub, a special thing happened. After I finished my general onboarding in a company and I landed in my team, random people started writing me messages like, hey, this is my name, I work in this and that team, and welcome here, we are happy to have you. I'm happy to answer all your questions, and if you feel like it, once you have time, let's schedule a chat. And I did exactly that. So in a week, in the first 2-3 weeks, I knew most of the people in my team and in the surrounding teams, because we are a remote team. So there was no one I could really meet in the office. The more it is important to create those connections. And that had two effects. Not only I felt welcomed, but I already knew the people and I felt encouraged to ask if I get stuck. In some companies, the traditional approach is that one new developer gets one mentor. And there's nothing wrong about that, but there are also different ways. Because what happens if that one mentor is solely responsible for the new developer, it takes a lot of their time, it takes a lot of their energy, and they always bring just the one approach, their own. Especially if this is happening in a traditional office setting, and they sit together, what is often recommended because it removes the barriers, but it also has a taxing effect on the efficiency of that senior developer. So when I joined, I got different people who were there to support me. One of them was my general onboarding buddy from a different team. So I could start creating connections within the wider organization. They were happy to answer questions about how things work at GitHub, if I have this and that trouble, how I can deal with it. And they also knew some part of the code base. Then I had a technical onboarding buddy. She was responsible for showing me our code base, showing me our observability tools, answering the questions about the code, about our features. Then I also, during the first round of talking with people from our team, I met another colleague who was really proficient and enthusiastic about Rails, and we agreed that he will be my mentor for the time being. So I also had that person who supported me with all the Rails and Ruby related questions. And then we also have a Slack channel where we ask questions, whatever questions, and then people who just have time can answer and then block the person. So you don't have to go to your one buddy, which you have, and kind of interrupt them every time you have a question or want to ask something. And this has two effects. It makes it easier for people to ask, because you know there are many people who can help you. And on the other side, by asking the questions, also other people having similar questions will see the answers. So making this public and transparent motivates other people to ask too, and reduces the load of individual questions, because often more people have the same problem. Often people claim that hiring juniors is harder now if we work in a remote companies. And I do get it. Like, that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy conferences, to coming here, have that in-person contact, being able to look into people's eyes, ask a question, have a chat. But there are things we can learn from remote work. One of them is that you have more power over your time or over your calendar. Because when you are in the office, people just stop by, have a chat, and it's nice, but sometimes it's really hard to get things done if you're constantly interrupted. So if you are remote, you can book your slots. Okay, I've blocked this part of my calendar because I want to work on this and that feature. You can also, you schedule, you are very intentional in your coaching, mentoring, or buddy sessions. You can prepare with questions, and everyone knows what to expect. And also, we do ad hoc meetings, which are close to what happens in the office. If you just walk by and want to ask something, it doesn't mean that if I have a question and I didn't schedule a meeting that I can't get an answer. But what we do, we just ask, hey, would you have a time in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes today, in an hour, whatever? And that person can say yes or no, and then we still can get that kind of spontaneous contact. So now, I would like to ask you, who feels like the new developer in the company? Can you raise your hands? So we don't have that many here. Then, who mentors people or feels like a senior in your company? Okay, I'd be interested what other people in between. And then also, if you're in a company owner or technical leader, architect, so person who influences the culture and decides about company values. Do we have some of them here? Yes, very good. So now if you ask yourself, what can you do as a company to make this ramping up, onboarding better, to create the culture of trust and kindness? So it's really important to acknowledge and make available the time for mentoring and coaching, so that it's part of the senior's job to help unblock other people and new developers specifically. Because if you have the same workload, and then you have a new person, which you're fully responsible, well, we see there will be a friction. As a senior, if you have a new developer on your team, you can reach out to them after they join. You can also show that it's okay to ask questions by doing the same, because no one expects you that you know everything. And if seniors model that behavior, that it's okay to not know everything, that it's okay to ask questions in public, it helps juniors also do the same. You can also encourage the balance between helping them and independent work. Because if you're the person who sits next to them all the time, and in the very moment they have a struggle or they have a question, you answer that and you help them, you're not really helping them. Because every person who's learning, they need some time to figure things on their own, but that doesn't mean that they need to be stuck. So encourage them for you and for them to find that balance. Pose the right questions. If someone has a problem, one way is to unblock them is give them solution, and that's fine sometimes. Sometimes it's also better to ask the right question, to point them where they can find their solution on their own, and be ready to help by doing pairing and mentoring sessions, for example, and make it clear that it's okay to ask. If you're a new developer, get to know the team. It can be you who initiates this contact, especially in a remote setting. It's fine to reach to people. Hey, I just joined. Would you like a 10-15 minute chat to get to know each other? Don't be afraid to ask, and plan how you want to tackle your challenges. One of my colleagues once wrote me this into a chat message. When I was about to start with a work task, which was kind of more complicated and involves cross-team collaboration. And he said, I really, really want you to succeed on this, and I will put more of my time to support you whenever you need. Just reading this was so powerful for me, and also kind of surprising. Like, I know people are super nice in my team, in GitHub, in our community, but this really struck me. And yeah, I just know there is someone, there is my team who has my back. Second thing I want to talk is the value of hands-on experience. I know, again, that this is different in different companies, but at GitHub, we really try to push that the new people, new developers, ship. I think before it was like on the first day to ship. The goal is to ship to production on the first day. Now it's more like first week, after you join the team. And so the point is that we really try to motivate people, and we make the people work on the real code from the start. Well, the PRs will be reviewed, so it's not like there should be a risk in that. And also, you do the deploy together. So it's a way of showing them how the things work in your company. There are several factors in our company which are in favor of this. So we strive to ship small self-contained changes and creating smaller PRs, and we ship often. We ship almost constantly. So this makes it easier for us. What we also do, we watch for good first issues. So these are little tasks, for example, bugs or fixes or little improvements which are not critical, so they can wait. Not critical, they're also not urgent, they're small, and they're easy to implement. So if we come across such a task, we label it as a good first issue, and once we have a people joining our team, we assign them some of them. It could be also a developer on our team which is already there, but they're starting to work with a new area of code or with a different code base. So they still can pick up these good first issues. What I really enjoy about our team is the pairing sessions. And then the traditional setting is you have seniors and then they pair with the juniors, and then I like to drive more often because that's where you learn the things, but of course it depends. But you can also pair with different people. You can pair on your tasks and drive them and get the help from the more experienced developer. But you can also use pairing session just to explain some new area of code and have them to follow. And it's not just about coding. Of course, coding is a really important part of being a developer, but by pairing, you share way more than that. You share how you think about the problem. You share where you look for solutions when you're stuck, how you search documentation. People often pick up like these little tricks, like, oh, this is an interesting Git command, or I didn't know about this shortcut. So they are becoming way more productive because you show them those things which you would normally never mention in some official session. And then at the beginning, things are overwhelming. New code bases are overwhelming, new work is overwhelming. So focusing on the one first step to understand the smallest thing you can, make the change, and then expanding that, it's really important. You can help them by bringing that focus, making it clear for them, and not overwhelming them, because they usually are anyways, because there's just so much to learn. And yeah, so first it's good to understand the task and then expand to understanding the code base, and maybe then also code base for other teams or features which work. We use PRs, pull requests or merge requests, to ship the code. But they can be way more than that. They can be also means to teach. Do your new people review your code? Usually it's not what you ask them to do, right? The senior people review all the code. But you can also ask more people. You can ask your new developers to look at your PRs. They can post questions there. They can see how you solve the problem. They can learn how you write the descriptions. So they learn, again, way more. So having them to review PRs of the team is a great way how to bring them up to speed, how to show them naturally how you value things, how you want to have things done. When you're reviewing their PRs, be nice and offer suggestions. Of course, if there is a bug, you want to make it clear that has to be changed. What we often do, that we clearly discriminate between things which needs to be changed, and we wouldn't let the PR forward, and things which we personally think could improve that PR, but it's upon the author to honor that suggestion or not. And also, often we suggest to do those changes or improvements in a follow-up PRs, so that you don't necessarily block that work and PR and having this back and forth with 70 comments. Of course, if it's good enough. And the last type of how you can use the PRs is doing a walkthrough. So if there's a new part of the code I want to learn about, and I'm happy to review it for someone else, but I'm not that at home with that code, we do a PR walkthrough during the call, and then I understand what they did, I can clarify all the questions, and they get one more reviewer and more eyes looking at their changes. And then, as I said, coding is just not about coding. And depending if your new developer is just freshly out of university or is a career changer, they need to learn different set of skills. Because if someone already worked for 10 or 15 years, you want to focus on the technical things, you want to focus on how to collaborate as a developer in a team, but you don't need to teach them how to work, usually, how to plan their time, their tasks. So try to make them more and more independent and suggest including them in a process of planning, also their own development. What would be next to tackle, how they can get unblocked, how to manage the tasks and competing priorities. Because ultimately, you want to get them to the same level as you are, because you all progress, right? This is another quote from my teammate, and she wrote that, "I like to think that my time is a shared resource of the team, and so is everyone else's. So if asking for help will free me to work on the next thing sooner, I'm also helping to the team." So having this culture of unblocking other people, of that it's okay to asking the question, is not just helping that developer, it's helping the whole team. So what can you do? As a company, you can encourage pairing. You can make processes transparent and include the new developers in the planning as much as it makes sense. As a seniors, you can think about your PRs as a teaching material. You can point them to interesting resources or interesting tasks they could pick up next. You can prepare small self-contained tasks for them and delegate it. You can free your time, and you don't have to do those things you already did like 100 times by delegating that to someone else, to the new developer, where they can learn and you can work on more interesting problems. Ask for their reviews and encourage asking questions and commenting on the PRs. PR doesn't have to be just approving if everything's right. It can be a teaching mean. And keep your mind open. You can be surprised that you may learn something. As a new developer, you can also comment on, or as all the developers, you can comment on your own PRs when explaining parts of the code when you made a trade-off or there may be questions arising. And you also can check the PRs of your more senior colleagues. Do you have time? You can just browse what changes your team is shipping. And again, don't be afraid to ask, because that's how you learn. And now, so the whole point of hiring junior developers is to make them more independent, more efficient, right? How can we do that? Over the time, you want to increase the independence and their speed. It's great if you can take into account their backgrounds and build on their strengths. So let them work first on the tasks which are familiar to them. When I joined GitHub, I joined as a Rails and Ruby developer. It was my main interest. But we also have a service in Go. But it was obvious that the tasks I worked on first were the Rails tasks, because that was what was most easier to me, how to get up to the speed. And just later on, I started with a Go code base. So on their strengths. During one-on-one, even though there are not that many managers probably here, but you can understand what the developer needs to succeed, what they struggle with, and what's their interests. You can present the opportunities also as a senior developers to them. If you know what they want to learn, in which direction they want to go, be their supporter. And if you see the opportunity, let them know, advocate for them. As a new developer, you can prepare for the one-on-ones. You should bring the questions, the topics. You can say, I'm interested in this and that. Is there opportunity for me to learn that? If your company has a set clear expectations about what the developers on each level should do, this helps everyone to understand where they are, where they should improve, and where they perform good. So you can do this through one-on-ones, but also if you have this feedback and review conversation. This is a great place to do this check-in, like, am I doing good? What is the next thing? Do you see a problem? And the last quote is from my manager, or like my former manager. Now she's our director of code scanning. And she often used this, choose your own adventure. So of course the team has a set of priorities. They have some tasks which they need to fulfill. But there are also many people and many features, or a lot of work. And she really encourages that people can say, oh, I'm really interested in doing this or that. And that is very motivating, and it's also very encouraging. So if you can, bring the new developers to that process and let them decide, co-decide on what they want to work next. Of course, it has to make sense in the context of your company, but often there are these little decisions they can do. So again, to summarize, what can you do as a company? You should make it clear what is expected from your developers at the different levels. And check with them regularly how they are doing, how they are feeling, what they are needing to succeed. It's your task as a company to set them up for success. As a senior colleagues, you can suggest the opportunities for them. You can search for the tasks which would be suitable. You know them because you coach them, so you know what's the next step they should do. You can nudge them there. And also give them time to shine. If you can find the task where they succeed, let them present the little feature they did in front of the company. Let them take the spot and show they're doing well. As a new developer, make it sure that you understand the expectations for your next steps, for the next month, 3 months, for the next year. Prepare for the feedback and review conversations, because you need that information. You want to have that view from outside. And keep and document your work. Track what you worked on. check in regularly what are your goals and what are your next steps. Julia Vance called this a brag document. And also, you can be proactive. You can tell your managers and your colleagues what you're interested in and what you want to work on. So as a summary, I would like you to remember the power of kindness and support, the value of hands-on experience, and having a clear path forward. These are three crucial things which help new developers to ramp up fast, feel confident, and become senior faster. I want to thank you, and I would encourage you to stay in touch. And I have one more task for you. I have a question. What would be the one thing you would do differently next time you would try out? And now I'd like to see your phones. Where are your phones? So this is not the join QR code. It's a Google Form QR code, and you don't have to sign in. And if you click there, then you can decide if you want to write something or not. But I would really invite you and let me know what would be the one thing you would try next time. And with that, we can open the Q&A.
Anyone? I do have a question myself. It was something you actually wrote as a possible question, but I'm interested because I recently joined a company that is much smaller than what I'm used to. What is the biggest difference when onboarding someone that is a junior engineer in a smaller team than in a bigger one?
So usually there are two things. In a smaller company, you have the privilege to know most or all your colleagues and know them pretty well. So that makes it kind of easier to cooperate. But also, the tasks are usually like Morse code. So smaller companies have one or couple of teams and they work together. So there's a bit of less choice and a bit of less bootstrapping of all the support. I think that's like the biggest difference.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, I can consider myself as a junior engineer in this company because it's a tech stack that I don't know anything about, frankly. Like, I'm trying to stay as far away as I can from JavaScript, but like, dude is a creep. So yeah, I have that feeling too. I'm like, what am I doing here? So understandable. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, in your onboarding program, do you directly embed the newcomers to existing engineering teams, or you have some bootcamp type of step beforehand?
Yes, so I wouldn't say it's a bootcamp kind of step. So there's a general onboarding when you learn the things about GitHub. And then there's an engineering onboarding when you learn the theoretical things about how we do deploy, what things we use, about the organizational structure of different engineering teams. And then you land in your team. And that's where you start to work. And that's where you also learn about your team relevant code base and features.
And do you do something different for engineering interns or people with less background or less experience than the typical engineer?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure about the internship program. So what I know about when we also hire junior developers, they go through the same. I can't really say if the internship program is different and in what regards.
Yeah, I'm asking mostly because at some point I was leading our internship program and we were doing things in different stages, but we can discuss it later.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
There's another question, yeah, over there.
Hi, thanks for the talk. My question is, I guess for onboarding junior developers, companies have different kind of milestones that these junior developers are able to accomplish within a time frame. Can you give a walkthrough of how that looks like in GitHub? If yeah, you have like you mentioned that first week they should be able to push to production. Maybe you have some more further down.
Yes. So I also
Thank you.
want to say that, yeah, that even though GitHub shares this culture and similar principles, there are still quite strong team differences. So what I'm talking about is mostly valid for our organization of like 100 people. But yes, so in my case and in our case, it's that was the one thing with shipping the first week to production. And then, so your first task that's connected to that focus. First, you get one task. You have also onboarding board with a lot of materials to read, videos to go through, but like you have one task to work on, the coding task. Once you're done with that, you continue with something next. The general expectation is that within the 3 months, you should ramp up and start shipping code regularly. And then over the course of next 3 months to the year, just your tempo and breadth increases. That's also true for the PR reviews, because it is a kind of a weird situation when you just join a team and as a junior, and you're like, okay, so when should I review code? I don't want to review their code because I don't know it yet. At the different side, you also can review the code just for your technical knowledge. So I was, for example, surprised, even though GitHub is a Rails company, we have developers who didn't work with Rails that much before. So even though I joined as a junior developer, I was able to contribute with my Rails knowledge to PRs of my senior colleagues. And I didn't realize that, and this was also a very empowering moment for me. So you can, even as a new person, you can review the PRs. You don't have to decide, I'm letting this PR go or not. But you can say, oh, I'm looking. You can also look just at the style. And you can ask your questions. So one other thing, which is kind of expectation, is that you will be able to review the code of others with time passing and also understanding not just the code and the style and like typos or syntax, but also the business logic and how much it makes sense, what the PR does. And last thing to that, and then later on, but we are then getting far and far from the initial process, is to lead your own kind of features or projects. So first, you're getting the tasks assigned, and then the expectation is that you need instructions which are detailed, and then later on, the expectations is if you get the similar problems, you can work on them independently. You still may ask for the help, but you don't need to explain everything from scratch when you're starting the new tasks. And with the time, you then, if you start with a new type of task, again, is expected you need more support, but how the time proceeds and you have more experiences, you are expected to be able to deal with the different problems and then plan your own work and then plan the work for others. Yes.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.